Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar called Verification of Payee, Getting Ready for the Last Milestone. I'm Mirela Ciobanu, lead editor with the papers, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us. Together with Worldline and Projective Group, we have prepared an interactive discussion on getting ready for the final regulatory milestone for verification of payee. The verification of payee mandate is a regulatory requirement that demands payment service providers to verify a payee's name and account information before a payment is processed. So starting with 9th of October 2025, all European PSPs that provide SEPA payments must offer verification of payee to their consumers. For non-EU countries, the implementation date is 2027. However, banks are supposed to have a functioning verification of payee solution to connect to the EPC's directory service by June 2025. This directory acts as a reference to confirm payee data across the continent and will effectively underpin verification of payee services throughout Europe. Therefore, banks are also supposed to test their verification of payee solution this summer so that these systems are operational by October 2025. Why verification of payee? Well, it has been introduced as a means of reducing misdirected payments and cutting fraud threats associated with instant payments. Where it's already in operations in markets such as the UK and the Netherlands, it has proven strikingly effective, reducing all-cause fraud by 81% and misdirected payments by 67%. This in the Netherlands. But we will talk more about getting ready to implement verification of payee, as we have invited payment experts Matthieu Mulot from Worldline and Roderick Kroon from Projective Group. And together with them, we are going to see what is currently happening in terms of getting ready for verification of payee. What are some key challenges for PSPs and banks that they encounter when they want to implement verification of payee? But not all is doom and gloom, because we also are going to share strategies for successful implementation. And of course, the audience is encouraged to share their questions, concerns in our Q&A session. So just a few housekeeping rules. The discussion will last approximately 30 minutes. Then we'll have a 10 minutes Q&A session. As mentioned before, everyone is encouraged to share their concerns and questions in the Q&A chat box. Also, on the right side of the screen, you have the CC icon located there for subtitles. You can select languages ranging from English, Spanish, German, Italian, Portuguese. But I have, talked too much, and I want to leave the floor for my guests. So welcome, Matthieu, Roderick. And could you please, each one of you, share something about your current positions and your professional background? So, Matthieu.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Matthieu Mulot, and I'm based in France. I'm working for Worldline in the open banking department. I have started work on the account-to-account, which is based on the PSD2 rails, so these PIS, Payment Initiation Services. And now I've moved a bit into more regulatory, let's say, topics, which gives me the opportunity to lead two products. The first one is to be able to be compliant with the PSD2 regulation and the upcoming PSD3. And of course, the topic of today, verification of payee.
Great, thank you. And Roderick.
Yeah, good morning. Happy to be here as well. My background is over 20 years experience in the financial industry, more than 15 years payments. I was one of the partners of a boutique consultancy firm in the Netherlands called Enigma Consulting, which was exactly 3 years ago acquired by Projective Group. Consultancy firm, over 1,200 people supporting banks, financial institutions in over 8 countries. So my current role is I'm the solution owner of instant payments and VUP within Projective Group. basically meaning that we help, we ensure that we have propositions to support all our clients in the VOP and IPR challenges. And myself, I'm not only writing papers, I'm actually implementing instant payments with many banks. And in the fortunate position that I'm from the Netherlands, which is a country that already has instant payments and VOP for quite some years. So quite some experiences there.
Yeah, so for our audience, as you see, we are in good hands today. So yeah, I'm happy to have you both here because both of you have so much experience, not as theoreticians, consultants, but also getting your hands dirty with the technology. And now, before we go into the challenges and technology. As we know, verification of payee is part of the instant payment regulation. So, Roderick, what is the EU instant payment regulation with focus to this need to implement verification of payee? And why does it matter for banks and PSPs?
Yeah, indeed. So verification of payee is part of a bigger picture, a bigger challenge for financial institutions to get ready and compliant. This sheet summarizes basically the challenges as how we see it. So as you might know, there's an obligation for banks offering payment accounts to support instant payments and to support verification of payee as of October this year, at least for the Euro countries. It doesn't stop there, and non-Euro countries, as well as payment institutions and EMIs, have to go as well. They have a little bit more time, but in 2027. If you look at the instant payment side, there's a big change. 10 seconds processing rule. There's no fee that can not be different than a normal classical, say, credit transfer. And very important, the IPR as well applies to batch payments, both for instant payments, but as well for the verification of payee. If you then look at impact on sanction and fraud, the IPR will have impact there as well. It forces banks to move to 7 days account holder screening. And I can already promise you will have more fraud attempts because instant payment is an attractive instrument for fraudsters. And you will get more rejects because of the fact that with the time sensitivity of instant payments, you will not have time to analyze hits. You basically can only reject them or accept them. And so that's an interesting starting point for VOP. It's an interesting instrument for fraudsters. So that means that Europe tries to add some preventive measures, and VOP is an important one of them. It's mandatory as of October. It's not only for instant payment transactions, but as well for the classical SEPA transactions. So that's good to know. And it applies as well to batch payments, surprisingly. And you can, of course, opt out as corporate if you don't want it. It's fine. It's not forced upon you. But if you want to make use of it, the banks have to offer it to you, which makes it an interesting user experience. Of course, every bank, every financial institution need to decide how to cover the VOP. We will talk about that one later. But what it is and will impact for sure are your channels and all your channels, whether it's apps, whether it's electronic banking, whether it's your branches, whether it's your telephone channels. VOP has to be implemented in all of them. And there's interesting discussions about liabilities. What if you get a hit and you still continue with the payment? Well, stuff that we can discuss later on in this webinar as well. And for a bit more details on VOP, I would like to invite Matthieu to basically explain a bit more how it works.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, I think we all know about VOP, but I wanted to frame a bit where we are. So what is VOP? That's really the capability to verify the IBAN account holder and to compare this account holder name with a submitted name by the payer to make sure that both names are matching to reduce fraud. This is basically how it works. So what does it require to the payer's bank? The payer's bank needs to be able to discuss with all the banks in Europe, all the different recipients bank in Europe, needs to be able to push a VOP request with the IBAN and the name of the recipient, but as well, in the same time, to be able to receive a VOP request by any European bank and to be able to assess the name matching. When everything is done, the payer's bank needs to be able to send back to the payer the information if the name matching is assessed as a match, a close match, or a no match, to let the payer take an educated decision if he wants to continue with the SCT or the ASCT-ins, or if he wants to cancel it. Last but not least, this is not sufficient. The payer's bank and the recipient's bank needs to track all the different transactions, all the requests and all the answers into an audit trail to support potential dispute management in case of fraud. Because indeed, fraud might arise a bit, so we need to be able to tackle them. So what has done the EPC, as we can see in the next slide, the EPC, which is the European Payment Council, they built a scheme, basically. And this scheme, first of all, is dedicated to a new player, because studies shows that 80% of the banks doesn't want to deploy the technologies themselves. They prefer to go through technology provider that we call an RVM, a routing and verification mechanism. And those RVMs will handle the VOP requests and questions on behalf of the bank. And to be able to contact the other banks or the other RVMs, they're using a kind of a form book, which is basically a file, the EDS file, the EPC directory servers, which lists all the different RVMs, all the different banks. So we know, thanks to the BIC, to which bank we need to ask the question, is this name actually the right name? Finally, all the RVMs and all the banks will have the same protocol. This ensures actually the interoperability inside Europe of all the banks and all the communication to not repeat mistakes which has been done in the past. So in few words, this is the verification of the scope.
Yeah, and regarding the EPC's directory service, I think that they opened registration for RVM applicants. And these registrations close on the 30th of April. So for for players interested in this registering with the EPC. Great. So now that we've seen what is currently happening, we have explained, the theory, the terms. Now we are curious to see what are the challenges with implementing verification of payee. And here we want to ask our audience, though we notice that it is very active in the Q&A and chat section. Thank you very much for engaging with us. We have a poll question regarding what challenges are most significant for you when it comes to implementing verification of payee. And here you can select up to 3 questions. And while our audience select their votes, I'm curious to see, Roderick, what do you think is going to be top challenge?
I think the top challenge will be to be compliant in time. There's not a lot of time left, and you have to do it at the same time as other rules and regulations apply as well, instant payments, but as well other regulations. So the regulatory pressure on financial institutions is huge, and they have to fit in this as well, which is not easy.
Yeah, and Matthieu, what do you think?
It's difficult to go behind Roderick because clearly I've got the same vision. I mean, the schedule is kind of challenging, and this is the concern that is raised most of the time. So that's why we put it as A. Be compliant on time is most probably the top topic.
Yeah. Well, let's see what has the audience voted, and then we'll take each challenge and talk about it. So most of the votes we have, yes, with be compliant on time with 22%. Then on the second place, and we have 2 options on the same place. Ensure all channels are ready for verification of payee with 18%, and also to provide an optimal customer journey. Then we have built a smooth process for batch verification of payee service unhappy flow with 15%. Yeah, and then we have maximized the number, and on the last two places we have make sure the customers' impacts are managed and select the right RVM. So let's see with the first challenge, who wants to address it?
Yeah, I will answer that one. So be compliant on time. We all understand the topic. We need to protect ourselves from the liability shift and to potential regulatory fines. So indeed, this is a challenging schedule today, and we need to be to ensure that we are ready on time. So to make it happen, the advice would be that DOP is not as simple as it looks, so it is quite a complex implementation. So with the remaining time, the advice would be to work with an experienced RVM provider, and actually not any type of RVM, but maybe consider an RVM which is recognized, so certified by the EPC, to ensure a good collaboration with the scheme head. And last but not least, with the time that we have today, it's quite good to have an RVM which has already a running solution. It is not the time to develop it. The solution should be kind of ready, and it is time to implement it now. So basically, use an RVM recognized by the EPC with a current solution. That's basically the advice to be ready on time.
Yeah, and on the second place, we had both two options. So I'll start with ensure all channels are ready for verification of payee. Roderick, maybe you can, share more on this.
Yeah, like I mentioned, all channels are in scope, and what we hear from discussions, just a very practical example is, in order to start the VOP check, basically you need to have the BIC available in your channel. Because the BIC, like Matthieu was explaining, is the one that actually determines how you get access to the other side, to the party that needs to provide the response. And we hear from the practice that in the channel, the BIC is not always available. It is often added later on in the payment engines, and we have only the IBAN. So that's a challenge to get the right data attributes at the right place. And that's an IT challenge that you have to overcome. And the second challenge we hear is, especially in non-online channels, telephone channels or branches, how do you explain a close match to a customer? Because it's almost right. So what data are you going to give? What not? Do they understand what you're talking about? And so to implement that kind of logic and to train your staff about it will be definitely a challenge.
Yeah. On the second place, we also had provide an optimal customer journey with fast response time. Matthieu?
Yes, so I'm not really surprised by that one, because nowadays, having a frictionless experience is key. This is all what every payer is expecting. So it's very important to have an immediate answer to your question. So if you want to maximize the number of credit activities, it's quite necessary to create an optimal customer journey, which means an almost instantaneous answer. Today, the requirements of EPC is 1 second, but we believe that needs far much faster to satisfy the customer. So if you want to make that happen, please select a provider which has already such an experience with such a topic. It's quite important. And because I'm referring to performance, it's quite important as well, and Roderick mentioned it, that we've got online requests and batch requests. So it's very important to ensure that the online answer time is always good, even if batch are launched. So be very careful by the response time, the experience of the RVM regarding this topic, and their capability to maintain that performance regardless of a load. This would be our advice.
Yeah. And then on third place, we had built a smooth process for batch verification of payee service unhappy flow. And Roderick, you mentioned about having right data in situation like close match. How do we deal when we go on the other side with no match?
Well, this one is, of course, on the batch process, like Matthieu mentioned, and I see a lot of questions in the Q&A on the batches, because it is a different process. If you send a batch
Okay.
of 100,000 payments, it first needs processing time, so that's definitely not within the 10 seconds. It actually might take an hour for the batch is processed and you actually have completed the VUP checks. So what does that mean for the authorization? Do I need to wait? How long do I need to wait? And if I then send a batch of 10,000 payments and 2 result in a close match hit, what does it mean? Does it stop the batch? Can I continue? If I continue, you actually give away the liability that normally banks has if the check was successful for fraud cases later on. So that part needs to be looked at as well. What do you do if you have hits? And does the bank know that you had hits? Because it really makes a difference later on in the process if something happens on the fraud side with that individual payment. So the design on how batch fits in, the user flow, do you combine it with file authorization? Do you make it a separate step? You have not seen a lot of examples yet. Every bank is struggling to design the best approach. So I'm very curious to find out what banks in the end have decided, but it will be an interesting process for corporates, and it will make or break their decision as well to make use of it, or whether they are just going to opt out and basically do not change anything and do not make use of the benefits of the VUP checks as well for batch.
Yeah. We also had one of the challenge, make sure that the customer impacts are managed. Roderick, if you want to, continue.
Yeah, of course. If I look at the Netherlands, the VOP was introduced quite gradually. So there was not a lot of, there was no big bang. It was there, starting with one bank that invented it, and then it was rolled out gradually across all the banks, and now it's there. That's different from the approach that we now have, where every bank is going to introduce it almost at the same time. So does the customer understand what is happening? Some countries will have campaigns even about VOP to inform the customer that something will change. It will make it safer, but of course they still need to understand it. And if you give back that it was a close match, how do you do that? Do they understand what's going on? And an interesting discussion I had recently in Belgium was about address books, where I have my mother in my address book, and in my address book, I don't mention her name. I call her mother. A mother and an IBAN. But if I send mother to the VOP, it will definitely result in a no match. So should we now start adjusting the address books to really have the proper name in there instead of an alias? All little migration issues that might impact the customer experience and might introduce friction if we don't implement that properly. So I do recognize the challenge, definitely, that you need to spend time on how to communicate and to train your clients on what will happen.
Yeah. And on the last, but not least, I mean, it's still an important challenge, was selecting the right RVM. And here, who wants to share more about this challenge? I think Roderick again has some ideas.
Well, it's part of the agenda later on. So definitely there is a make or buy decision to be taken. And in the end, there are many suppliers like Worldline offering solutions. So how to make the best choice there, that's later on in the agenda, a topic that we will touch upon.
Yeah. So indeed, we have discussed about, what are some pressing challenges for PSPs and banks when implementing verification of payee. And we saw that what was anticipated was true, that getting ready for the deadline is one of the biggest challenge. But also, managing customer experience and batch processing. And now, because we shared more about the challenge, let's switch on the positive side and to see that we still have some time left to prepare, and there are some strategies to best prepare for verification of payee mandate. So yeah, Matthieu, what steps do you need to take as a PSP or a bank to become compliant with verification of payee?
Yeah, let's go through the story. I hope we can all see basically the 10 layers of actions to be done in order to be compliant with VOP today. To be very clear with you, one of the constraints that we have is that the VOP scheme will be ready for interoperability testing in basically July, August. So the schedule that we are proposing today is really based on that constraint, is that we need to be able to do interoperability testing in July, August to be ready, offer ourselves September as the technical buffer to make sure that in October, everything is ready. This is how we have structured that planning and schedule. So of course, clock is ticking. So the first action to do is to have this make or buy decision. Do I want to develop the technology myself, or do I want to go through an experienced RVM? As I said, most of the PSPs today are going through an RVM. And when I look at the time which is remaining, I would strongly advise to go with an RVM today if your decision hasn't been taken yet. When you have decided on for this RVM, then you need to select the RVMs because there is quite a few in the market. And Roderick will list to you just after the different parameters to consider in order to select properly an RVM, which is matching your needs, because all RVMs doesn't have the same strategy, doesn't have the same vision about the market. They don't serve the same verticals, so you need to select the appropriate one. And when you have your RVM selected, or in parallel, order the QVAC. The QVAC, that's a certificate, the technical certificate, which will be used by the recipient banks to validate that you are part of the scheme so that you are eligible to request for a VOP to them. Then start the most important stuff, administrative work, which is you need to adhere to the EPC. Most of you have received already an information by the EPC advising you to adhere to the EPC scheme. There are 3 waves today, and I'm just showing 2 waves to you because basically the first wave, which will last in mid of May, ensures that you will be registered mid of August, so plenty of time actually to do some testing and then to be ready. Or you can use the wave number 2, but the wave number 2, which lasts till end of June, will ensure that you are registered mid of September. Mid of September, which means basically 3 weeks before the go live. So maybe not the best option. And the third wave, I will not mention it because basically there is no assurance that you will be registered on time. So basically, no surprise in my advice, let's go with the first wave to ensure that you are registered on time. And then basically, I'm splitting into 2 steps, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 and 8. The step number 4 is that you will start to adapt the payment channels as described by Roderick. You need to adapt the payment channels to this VOP, which is transforming the payment into from a 1-step approach to a 2-steps approach. So you need to change your online banking, smart application, back office, batch, etc., etc. And basically all those payment channels are concentrated into one single backbone. So start with a backbone. And when the backbone is ready, you can start to integrate it directly with the RVM, which should be ready. You ensure that globally your solution is working. And when the first payment channel is working, you can start to do the user acceptance with what I consider the standalone RVM. You do it within the RVM, and they will have a mock-up of the other EPC RVMs. So you only are testing the integration between you and the RVM. And each time a payment channel is ready, then make the user acceptance with the standalone RVM. This is one stream. The second stream is really mostly the RVM's work because they need to be certified towards the EPC. Then they need to provision the EDS file with the different parameters, which is matching your constraints, and then start to do the interoperability test with the other RVMs, which is basically most of them will happen in July and August. So let then the RVM spend 1 month to do interoperability tests, and then, because all your payment channels will be ready, do end-to-end testing from the payment channel up to the payee's RVM, which is, I think, crucial to make sure that from end to end the solution is working. You are ready end of August. Of course, we will have the prices, so we keep September as a security buffer, but at least you know that your solution is ready. And then your customers, but by the way, are your customers ready to face the difference? Maybe not. So to make sure that they can adapt to the changes, because you have a good vision of what are the solutions that you will implement, start to inform them about the changes to make sure that they understand that the process will change, that they understand that the alias might be managed differently. So start to communicate with them in August to make sure that in October, they know that changes will happen and they will not be surprised. So if you follow that schedule and those different checks, we believe that you are ready the 5th of October to support and to activate verification of payee.
Great. So now that we have seen what are the preparation phases, when it comes to what decision to take when being compliant with verification of payee to make or buy. So you said, this idea of partnering with the right RVM. I'm curious now, Roderick, to learn what are the parameters to consider when selecting the way to be compliant with verification of payee.
Yeah, I can talk hours on that one, but just to make, for me, the most important items, the make or buy decision, well, we're almost past that stage because you still need to decide to make it. You will not make it. It's quite complex. I know banks started to make it themselves. They realized it's more complex than they thought, and they shifted back to an RVM. So choosing an RVM makes your life a lot easier. And if you choose one, there's definitely a number of criteria to look at. One is are you looking for just a minimum compliance, get it over with solution, or do you really look at the RVM as well as a party, as a partner, which might add value-added services as well? For example, fraud indicators, fraud checks. Some RVMs are better in high value in bulk processing. Some basically make your life easier. Others basically still shift a lot of work to yourselves. So you need to decide on the requirements on what you're actually trying to solve on your end. If you're busy in one country, there's sometimes in a country a preferred choice or a party of choice or a kind of a standard, but that becomes more complex if you're having a bank and acting in, say, 5 or 6 countries. So do you aim for one RVM across all the countries? Or do you go for the best of breed per individual countries, which includes a contracting and an integration challenge? Although maybe on the local services, you might actually get more out of it. So that's a choice to make. Of course, you have to look at your volumes. Not all parties are equipped or experienced enough to process big volumes, especially if you look at batch VOP, the debulking. You don't want your customer to wait for hours before a batch is processed for VOP. So if that matters to your customers, you should go to a party that is known for processing high volumes with high speed. And looking at the timelines, we do not have a lot of timelines. So you really need to spend on how can the party, the RVM support you in the process. Do they help you with the registration? Do they have a test environment? Do they have the capacity to help you out there? Because at some point in time, everybody wants to go through that gate at the same time, and it doesn't work. So reserve the capacity on time and look at the capacity that they can offer you to help you out and be ready when you are ready. What we hear as well is on the integration side, if it matters to you, There's different ways to integrate. I see questions in the Q&A as well on security, on how do you do that? Apart from the certificates that Matthieu was mentioning, some integrate with APIs, some integrate file-based, some parties require you to support as well a heartbeat, so that they can check if you are there. So if that integration flexibility matters to you, there are RVMs that are better equipped to support you in that or not. And in the end, of course, it's as well a cost game. Direct costs per transaction or lump sum, and indirect costs. And with that, I mean cost of integration, cost of stuff that an RVM forces you to do yourself. And there are RVMs that basically tell you, fine, you give me the allowed lists. So if there's a name, they can give you 5 flavors, and they really check one-to-one with that. But that means that you have to determine the 5 or 15 or 25 aliases that you find acceptable. There are RVMs as well that makes your life a lot easier, probably at a cost, but it avoids you from having to do a lot of stuff. So quite a few considerations, Mirella, to look at when deciding on an RVM. Yeah, and time is scarce, as Matthieu mentioned. You should actually this month have decided on the RVM that you want to go with. Otherwise, the times will be very tight.
Yeah, and with the idea of time being tight, yeah, and people need to decide. Matthieu, I'm curious to see what makes Worldline's RVM different from, so your solution different from other players in the industry.
Yes, with pleasure, of course. And basically, I would like to make it short and to really expose like 3 key topics that we believe make a difference. First of all, it is crucial to be always available, to be able to handle the load, to make sure that the system is up and running and be able to deliver an answer within 1 second. And for that, Worldline is using a solution which is, which has like proven high performance capabilities. We are already processing millions of transactions every day. So adding VOP on top of it is not a big deal for the solution. We can confirm that we have a proven high performance capability. Despite this performance issue, I would like to speak a bit about this name matching algorithm that we have put in place. What we want to do is to maximize the optimization of a number of close match. The idea that we have is that we need to provide for the payer a frictionless experience to make sure that he trusts the solution, that he completes the payment till the end, and to maximize the number of SCTs which will be credited into your account. And this is possible not just by being compliant with the EPC recommendations, but going beyond those recommendations with smarter, let's say, comparisons. I've seen in the chat, for example, phonetic distance is something which is quite important to be able to address misspelling, for example. And the last one, which is the crucial thing, is that we need to be ready on time. And here I would like to be the advocate of Worldline's experience in payment challenging project implementation. We've got track records of projects which were implemented on time with reliability, with a full scope. So you can rely on a partner which is used to face such challenges and which is used to succeed in those challenges. So that's the 3, let's say, items that I consider as like a differentiator towards the competition.
Great. And now that, we saw what are some best practices of getting ready for verification of payee, and there isn't too much time left. Let's go with the session of questions. And in a way, you kind of addressed the first one. We have, how strict is the name comparison? Does it include also phonetic similarities, or is it a letter by letter comparison? So if you want to give more details on this, or...
Yeah, it's just very briefly. Of course, you can implement algorithms which are designed to calculate the distance between one string and another. So that's really from let's say a letter to the letter comparison, and with some flexibility. And you've got the capability to implement yourself, so to go beyond the recommendation of the PC to really implement a phonetic, let's say, comparison, which is possible. So you are free to implement the name matching capabilities that you want to. You've got a recommendation that you follow, you don't follow, and you've got the capability to go beyond if ever you want to, which would be my advice, to be honest.
Yes, thank you. Also, another question for Matthieu here. What is the pricing model to join your verification of payee solution?
Yeah, so I think nobody will be surprised by the pricing. There is a setup fee, of course, because we're implementing a solution. We have decided ourselves to use it in SaaS, so to make it as cheap and cost-effective possible for you. And then it's a per transaction basis. And of course, the more transactions you have, the cheaper the transaction will be. So that's basically a very standard pricing model. No need to say for people who are used to VOP that either you make an API connection to a core banking system, either we have what we call the data storage, so we can extract all the IBANs and all the account holder names into a local database, and we can manage fully the VOP assessment on behalf of the bank. And this comes with an extra cost with our solution. So nothing really unusual, I would say.
Yeah, most of the time it's about the context. Now a question it's for both, but I think Roderick in a way tackled this idea in the beginning of our presentation. Is this timeline valid for Eurozone PSPs? What about non-Eurozone ones?
Yeah, the obligation for non-Eurozone ones is not this year, October. They have a bit more time until I think summer 2027. It's of course not their primary currency, so there's less flows on euro flows in those countries. So the regulation give them more time, and that applies as well to payment institution and electronic money institutions. They have a bit more time than credit institutions.
Yeah, and again, you also tackled the batch processing. So I also understand corporates are included in this regulation, and that it also covers file-based payment flows.
Yeah, we discussed it. I saw another question here. Can non-banks as well make use of VOP? They can, but via their bank, it is for free. But we see a lot of use cases as well for corporates themselves to link to a VOP provider, like on client onboarding or to check the creditors in your ERP administration. So there's definitely use cases for corporates as well. The regulation is not about corporates. It's really about what banks need to offer their corporates. But we see as well that corporates themselves are contracting VOP providers for other type of use cases than only payment files.
Yeah. Here another one on the merchant side. Has the IBAN the merchant is sending money to be checked on every single transaction? Or will there be like trusted IBANs, sort of exemptions like 3D secure?
Okay, but that one's quite simple, is that the spirit of the regulation is that every transaction needs to be actively checked by the payer. So of course, every transaction needs to be checked through VOP process. Having said that, if you use a batch process, you still have the capability to do the opt-out mechanism, which means that you upload a file, you send money to any merchant or any third parties, and you avoid the VOP step. It's something which is possible today, but in case of fraud, the liability shifts on you. That's a disadvantage, let's say, the cons of that particular implementation.
Yeah, and now here a question more on naming. What are the major differences between the verification of payee and confirmation of payee? Roderick, maybe?
Well, in my definition, I don't see any difference. COP, that's more the term used in the UK, confirmation of
Yes.
payee. Of course, there's a little bit different regulation and rule books and schemes behind it. But in essence, it tries to solve the same issue. Make sure that you know you're paying to the right payee. So I don't see any big difference other than maybe the detailed rulings of the scheme and the rule books.
Yeah, now a more delicate one, and I think this will be the last one because we are almost ending our webinar. But don't worry, the rest of the questions are going to be answered via email. So yeah, in case of fraud and verified verification of payee, will the RVM be responsible for the potential damage? The liabilities part all the time, the toughest one.
Globally, the RVM is like working on behalf of the bank, so and the PSP. So unfortunately, in case of issue, ultimately, the PSP is liable for the fraud in case of a malfunction in the VOP process. So that's basically the structure of the recommendation of the EPC, the structure of the EPC spirit for this regulation.
Yeah, so partnering with a trustful RVM provider is crucial in this case. So we are almost ending our webinar, and I'm curious to find out from you a closing thought for our audience that wants to get ready for verification of payee mandate. Roderick?
Well, I think we're almost at over 40 Q&A questions, so that's and they're all relevant, in all honesty.
Yes.
So I see that there's still a lot of questions on the interpretation of the rules, and that's something I recognize from discussions that I'm having with a lot of banks. Is what exactly do I need to do? How does it work? So a little bit help from an RVM to guide you through that, because they have looked at it as well, will definitely make a difference as a sounding board, because it's not easy. There are many questions. We have a Q&A, but still you need to interpret a lot of the requirements yourselves and make your own choices. So start early. Don't wait. It's complex enough. And a lot of decisions still need to be taken, even internally, where you can have a choice to go left or right. And so start early would be my advice. If you have not started, you're already too late.
And Matthieu?
I'm always after Roderick, so yeah, clock is ticking clearly. It's a challenging schedule, we all understand that. The crucial moment is really this July, August, and this is happening during the summer. So it's not really a great moment, but yes, indeed, we need to take decisions quite early enough. There is a lot of flexibility, so we need to take decisions and validate them during this interoperability testing during July and August. That's really kind of a crucial. This topic is more complex, but it looks like, it looks very simple to verify a name versus a submitted name, but there is a lot of, and we see many questions, because indeed it's not as simple as it looks like. So yeah, get ready for a little bit of homework and be ready to have to squeeze your summer holidays, unfortunately.
Yeah, and to help you with your homework, we are sharing with you contact details for our speakers so that you can reach out directly to them. Or either you can reach out to the Worldline expert team helping you on implementing verification of payee. And thank you so much. Our audience has been very active today and asking lots of questions. Don't worry, things will be replied to you. And also for those interested to recap some of the key moments of our discussion, a recording is going to be available soon. And what can I say? Most probably we would need another extra hour or 2 hours to get back to all of the questions and to continue the discussing and think about ways how to compensate for the short amount of time and so many possibilities, both on solutions and things, bad things that can happen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.